My grandfather was a man the entire region feared and revered. They called him Tran the Half-Immortal, not because he claimed the title himself, but because in decades of practicing feng shui and casting nearly 4,000 divinations, he had never been wrong once. Those within the hidden circles said he had already touched the threshold of immortality, only one step away from leaving the mortal world behind. And yet such a man chose to bury himself alive. That year I was 10. That night there was no rain, no wind, yet the courtyard was bone-chillingly cold. My grandfather sat before the stone table, his face ashen, his gaze deep as the bottom of a dried well. He stared at me for a long time. It's time. I didn't understand what time had come. I only knew that that day he personally cut down the divine dragonwood behind our house, the sacred tree worshipped by the Tran family for hundreds of years as an ancestral guardian. When the tree fell, heaven and earth trembled faintly. Using its trunk, he built himself a coffin. When I broke down crying and begged him not to go, he only rubbed my head and said hoarsely, "If I don't go, you will die." I was born with the fate of 5 deficiencies and 3 lacks, compounded by the destiny of a spirit child. My lifespan was doomed to be short. My grandfather said there was only one way to keep me alive, a life exchanged for a life. The next morning, he gave me 3 instructions. First, before turning 20, I was not to leave the house and could only cultivate the techniques of the Azure Robe Sect. Second, after gaining ability, I was never to save people casually. The first time I intervened, it could only be for the Tran family. Third, on my 20th birthday, I was to marry Fuang Jin of the Puang family. On the wedding night, I had to collect her first blood, mix it with rainwater, and swallow it. I was too young then, only able to nod repeatedly, crying until I lost my voice. The following morning, my grandfather was buried at the Phoenix Eye of Mount Guanyin, exactly as he had instructed, the coffin tilted, head downward, feet upward. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, 9 black snakes crawled out through its seams and circled the grave for an entire hour before dispersing. At the time, I didn't know. My grandfather wasn't dead. He had been buried alive. After the funeral, I lived like a shadow. Beneath my grandfather's bed was a wooden box. Inside lay a divine dragon wooden token and 9 tattered books. He told me the token must stay on my body for life. The 9 books must be fully learned and understood before I could inherit his mantle. These were no ordinary books. Each was the record of a former sect master of the Azure Robe lineage. Ghost affairs, yin spirits, defiant feng shui, karmic retribution. Some passages were so terrifying I dared not sleep afterward. 9 years passed. I learned divination, physiognomy, and how to sense yin energy. Gradually, I began seeing things ordinary people never could. At 19, I opened the final volume, my grandfather's notebook. Inside was a single line that made my blood run cold. In the 19th year, the Fuang family engagement will activate. The defiance of fate begins there. Before I ever stepped into the wider world, the Puang family arrived first. A luxury car stopped before our gate. A middle-aged man who called himself Puang Husi came to discuss the marriage. That was the first time I saw Puang Jin. She stepped out of the car, clear-eyed, graceful, born with spiritual resonance. But the moment she entered the house, black qi rose between her brows, a sign of great calamity. After the discussion, Fuang Jin did not refuse the marriage, but her father, suddenly annulled it. 1 million in cash was placed before me, cold as a slap. "You're not worthy." As he turned to leave, I saw the same black key clouding his own forehead. Fuang Jin was about to suffer a blood calamity. I knew it, and I could stop it. That night, I left a letter for my parents, packed my ritual tools, and, for the first time before turning 20, stepped outside. The Puang estate was a grand villa, arranged in a perfect 9-palace flying star formation. Yet right beside it stood a newly built crematorium. No matter how auspicious the feng shui, it was siphoning death qi from the crematorium, turning fortune into disaster. Someone was deliberately setting a trap. The divination led me to a cemetery. There I found Luo Shudong, trying to force himself on her, alongside an old man raising a yin entity. A white-clad spirit manifested. Fuang Jin was terrified, and I seized control of the entity. In an instant, farce turned into nightmare. Luo Shudong collapsed to his knees. The old man begged for mercy. I retracted the entity and let them devour their own karma. I didn't reveal myself immediately. I let Fuang Jin believe her destined fiancé was Tran Ta Duong. Then I appeared at precisely the right moment. From that night on, the way she looked at me changed. Episode 3. I followed Fuang Jin back to the Puang estate. It was late, yet the house was far from quiet. Warm yellow lights stretched down the corridors, illuminating exquisite feng shui ornaments. But the more I looked, the more wrong the energy felt. The black key between Puang Jin's brows hadn't dissipated. It had grown stronger. This made no sense. Living within 9-palace protection, she should not face such disaster unless something was forcibly reversing her fate. "My father probably isn't asleep yet," she said softly. Sure enough, Huang Nu-Si stood by the window, his back to us. "I'm here to ask you to withdraw the annulment," I said bluntly. He turned, eyes cold. "The engagement is cancelled. The money has been paid. No, your place." I smiled faintly. "Business hasn't been going well lately, has it?" His expression shifted. "Do you know why?" I continued calmly. "Because you deviated from the path laid out by Tran the half-immortal." He fell silent for a long time. Then he said something that made my heart quake. "The feng shui of this house was arranged by your grandfather." Only then did I fully understand. Only my grandfather could have set up this 9-palace formation. But to Puang Nu-Si, my grandfather was dead, and I was just a child. "This engagement," he said coldly, "cannot continue." At that moment, a scream tore through the air from upstairs. "I'm not dead. Why did you burn me?" The voice was hoarse, filled with hatred, not the voice of the living. Fuang Nu-Si's face went deathly pale. "Oh no, it's Jin's mother." We rushed upstairs. The moment the bedroom door opened, icy yin energy slammed into us. A middle-aged woman sat bolt upright on the bed, eyes rolled white, veins bulging across her forehead. Above the bed hung an inverted bagua mirror, reflecting directly onto her. Talismans covered the walls, but none were orthodox. This was a yin-gathering formation. Someone had deliberately trapped a malevolent entity here. "She doesn't recognize anyone." I pulled Fuang Jin back. In my vision, a black-clad spirit was parasitizing her body. A ferocious spirit. I could expel it instantly, but my grandfather's warning thundered in my mind. Outside the Tran family never save people casually. If I didn't act, she would die. If I did, I would break the taboo. Just as I stepped forward. "Step back." A steady voice sounded behind me. I turned to see a middle-aged man in white martial robes, his aura restrained, yet blazing with yang energy. With a flick of his finger, he subdued the woman. A diamond finger struck her forehead. A purification incantation echoed. The entity was forcibly expelled. My heart surged. This was no ordinary man. Dragon clouds rise, tiger gates stand mighty. He clasped his hands, Dragon Tiger Sect, but when his gaze fell on me, his entire body trembled. You are a Tran? Named Ta Duong, I nodded, and he dropped to one knee. Young master, I've finally waited for you. After leaving the Puong estate, I followed him to the Dragon Tiger Sect dojo. His name was Ma Pingsheng. He told me a truth I couldn't ignore. 10 years ago, Tran the half-immortal came to me. He said that today you would appear at the Puong household. Not a day off, not a person wrong. My grandfather had foreseen everything, even my breaking the rules. He told me to wait, and if you acted, to tell you this. Try not to get involved. Withdraw now, and it's still not too late. I understood. Try meant the path was possible, but the price would be enormous. I didn't withdraw. I asked Ma Pingsheng to protect the Puong family, especially Feng Jin. In return, I accepted his son as my disciple. Half a month later, Ma Pingsheng died in the morgue, and when I arrived to identify the body, I felt it. The yin energy hadn't dissipated. I touched his wrist. A surge of foreign yin energy rebounded into my palm. This wasn't his. I lifted his eyelids. In those lifeless pupils lingered a hair-thin black thread. He was used as a life substitute, not murder, a borrowed fate. Only someone extraordinary could do this. The funeral was quiet, not because he lacked connections, but because those who should come dared not. Within 3 days, Dragon Tiger Sect shut down entirely. Disciples vanished, fled, or changed professions overnight, as if an invisible hand erased the entire lineage. His son, Ma Tianhao, only 17, knelt before the altar that night. Master, who was it? I didn't answer. That night, I dreamed of my grandfather, standing before the divine dragon coffin, he said. They've begun. Who? I asked. He stared at me. Those who belong neither to yin nor yang, who live by stealing the lives of others. I woke drenched in cold sweat. The divine dragon token burned hot against my chest. I bit my finger and dripped blood onto it. The moment blood touched wood, dragon patterns surfaced and spread. In that instant, I understood. Azure Robe was not just inheritance, it was bloodline. I was no longer an outsider. 3 days later, a letter arrived. No sender, no postmark. Only one line written in red ink. Ma Pingsheng's life was merely a deposit. Below it, a seal of a snake coiled around a coffin. My heart thundered. That seal matched the carving on my grandfather's coffin. But it wasn't a guardian serpent, it was an evil dragon. I went to see Fuang Jin immediately. She trembled when she saw me, not from fear, but because my aura had changed. I dreamed of you, she said. You were standing among countless coffins. I didn't deny it, because from this moment on I knew. The engagement, my grandfather's death, the annihilation of Dragon Tiger Sect, and my own life were all bound by a single invisible thread. To sever it, I had only one path: marry her, not for love, but because. If the wedding night did not follow destiny, others would use her as a sacrificial key. I looked straight into Fuang Jin's eyes and spoke the truth for the first time. If you don't marry me, you will die.